This is a engineered collapse, all right? We are seeing the engineered collapse of our supply chain, our fuel supply, and our food supply intentionally, all right? These two headlines are contradictory, but they're happening at the same time, all right? So the UN is warning of, quote, global food shortages and, quote, famine, all right? We will get to that in a second. But at the same time, the government just shut down thousands of farms by force. Thousands of farms by force have been shut down by the government, all right? So apparently we're facing record high food inflation, all right? Even if you don't see shortages in your area, different areas have different shortages, okay? More rural areas are going to see more shortages than more urban areas because that's where they send the food first, and that's where they know they can charge more for the food. And you might see more shortages if you're more rural. But bare minimum, you are seeing price inflation right now, prices going up. And the UN is warning of, quote, global food shortages. At the same time, governments are shutting down thousands of farms by force. All right, so make this make sense. Make these two headlines make sense to me. Somebody please explain this because I don't get it. Why are we shutting down farms? And one of the officials even said there are, quote, too many farms, right? And the UN is warning of, quote, global food shortages. So we'll get into all the details of that in just a second. But I wanted to warn you, this is what's coming to America. This is what's coming to westernized nations next. All right, so it's more than just the government shutting down your farm directly. That's happening right now. You are also going to be shut down from the supply chain and from fuel supply chain shortages as well. So this is happening in Nigeria right now. Nigeria cocoa production hit by fuel shortages. Quote, cocoa activities such as farmers getting to their farms to harvest cocoa, movement of cocoa from the farms to grading centers are hindered by the gasoline shortage, which began last week but has worsened this week, a cocoa trader said. This is happening in Nigeria right now. Shortages arose because the country's 4 refineries aren't working, while the only Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation can import gasoline. So they can't move their crops. They can't harvest their crops because there's no fuel, all right? That's what's going on. Some unofficial sellers are selling gasoline at more than 200 Nigerian a liter, exceeding the government's prescribed price of 165 a liter. All right, so they have price caps on this too. I've brought this up before, how price caps just create shortages. If you don't allow the markets to reflect what they need to pay to get fuel there, then you're just not going to get fuel there. It's not going to get there. There's nothing you can do, especially on a country-wide basis. Maybe if there was a worldwide fuel cap or something, it would happen. But if anytime it's a sect or a country, it normally does not work, and it normally just creates shortages. So, quote, traders are finding it difficult to transport cocoa to the grading centers. There are long queues at filling stations, but no fuel to dispense. All right. So people are lined up to get fuel, but there's no fuel, and they can't transport their cocoa to the distribution centers that they need to get to. They can't get to ports. So look for shortages of this to happen, and look for this to happen in Western countries as well. As we see more diesel shortages, we see the diesel crisis get worse. All right. So people don't understand fuel affects everything. Everything you touch. I know you guys do, but I feel like the general public does not understand. Everything you touch requires fuel, okay? It's like how kids don't understand that food at the grocery store comes from a farm, right? My kids know that, but a lot of kids just think the food's just there. It's just at the grocery store. They don't understand the complex supply chain it took to get it there, and the fuel for the tractors to harvest it, the fuel for the trucks to bring them food for their animals, to bring them corn or whatever, the fuel for them to transport their animals for harvest, right? All these different things, the fuel to transport it to the grocery store. There's a massive supply chain for everything you touch, especially things overseas, all right? That supply chain is very long, very complex, and requires a ton of fossil fuels because it has to transport all the way to a port overseas and then go to the United States or to your country. So fossil fuels are everywhere, it touches everything, and we are seeing countries being hit. This is how it works. The countries that can pay more, the countries that have more secure supply chains, they survive the longest, but all of the other countries are getting squeezed right now, right? And it's just another one of these things, another kink, 0.1%, even if it's just 0.1% of the global supply chain, it's another kink in the chain that's being taken out. So Nigeria is going to get hit hard from this. I'm sure this is a major crop for them as well. And this is something that we could see in Western countries. That's why I wanted to highlight it. All right, so let's get into what this UN Secretary General is warning of too. And then we will get into how the government just shut down thousands of farms. This is dystopian. It makes no sense that we have these two pieces of news coming out at the same time. So the UN Secretary General warns of, quote, famine and, quote, global food shortages. All right. So we are on our way to a raging food catastrophe. This is a quote, and the world appears to be indifferent. This is what he's saying. People in 5 separate places are facing famine. At G20 summit, I warned that without coordinated action, this year's crisis of affordability may become next year's global food shortage. All right, so he's saying it could be affordability this year. We're just seeing inflation. Next year, it could be massive shortages. And he's saying people are facing famine. All right, and he's saying it appears the world is indifferent. So I don't agree with the UN on a lot of these things because they are engineering a lot of this agenda that's being pushed that's making these shortages worse, which we are going to get into in just a second with these farms being shut down, because these farms being shut down is part of a UN agenda. But the UN is coming out, the Secretary General, and saying that there's going to be, he said, quote, raging food catastrophes, all right? Raging food catastrophes, famine, and this year's affordability crisis may be next year's global food shortage. So it's just, they're saying both of these things. They know what's happening. They can't say they don't know what's happening. But then at the same time, they're implementing these agendas to shut down our food supply, all right? So this happened in the Netherlands. So Netherlands to close up to 3,000 farms to comply with the EU rules. So thousands of farms are forcibly being shut by the Dutch government. The Dutch government plans to buy and close down up to 3,000 farms near environmentally sensitive areas to comply with the EU's nature preservation rules. 3,000 farmers in this one little country, which is a agricultural powerhouse in the EU, but 3,000 farms in the Netherlands is a massive amount. That's a lot of farmers. And they are doing this in the name of the environment. So it's part of this is a UN agenda, and we'll get into all the details of it too, because it's insane, and I'll point out all the hypocrisies of it because it doesn't even make sense. But this is a UN agenda that they're implementing for the climate, apparently. But the UN Secretary General is also saying we're facing global food shortages. And he says the world appears to be indifferent. I don't understand this. but this is your agenda to shut down farmers, all right? So the Netherlands is attempting to cut down its nitrogen pollution and will push ahead with compulsory purchases if not enough farms take up the offer voluntarily. So I reported on this actually a few months ago, you might remember, where they implemented this rule saying that a certain amount of farms need to voluntarily shut down to meet these rules, and you need to do this right now or we are going to force it, right? And they gave everyone a couple months, and they're saying not enough farms are taking up the offer. Yeah, you think what kind of farm would just willingly want to shut down, all right? So it says farmers will be offered a deal, quote, well over the worth of the farm, according to the government plan that is targeting the closure of 2,000 to 3,000 farms or other major polluting businesses. So now you are a major polluter if you farm, if you have animals, if you grow plants that are all part of the environment that we have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. You are now a, quote, major polluting business if you're just operating your business as you always did, trying to feed people. It says earlier leaked versions of the plan put the figure at 120% of the farm's value, but that figure has yet to be confirmed by ministers. So they'll give you 120% of your farm's value, of its appraisal value. What's the problem here? They're not taking into account that you will have your farm for decades, or you might have already had your farms for decades, and it's a income producing piece of property that produces income for you for years and years to come. You don't just sell it to make a quick 20% profit on your farm, okay? It's a thing that you invest in and you build up over the years to become more efficient. You get more equipment, you get more animals, you get more land, you build up your farm over the years. You don't just want to sell it for a quick, 20% over its appraisal value for some quick cash. This is a business, right? And I don't understand why these two things are happening at the same time, right? And this is what the nitrogen minister said. This sounds completely 1984 dystopian, just insane speak, all right? Nitrogen minister. There's a nitrogen minister, which, by the way, I'll just get into this now. I was going to cover this after, but I'll get into this now, and then we'll get into more details of this because it's extremely insane and dystopian. But nitrogen is a critical compound for plant growth. It's actually probably the most critical compound for leaf growth and plant vegetative growth, okay? And if you've ever bought any fertilizer, the main three compounds, the main three chemicals for plant production, plant life, there are macro and micronutrients. These are the three main macronutrients that every single plant needs to grow. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. Those are the three that they need, and nitrogen, the first one, because it's the most important one. You can grow plants with a fertilizer that essentially has no phosphorus or potassium. Won't be great, but it's hard to grow plants with fertilizer that doesn't have any nitrogen, all right? You can grow stuff with just nitrogen, but you can't really grow anything with just potassium or phosphorus. You can grow certain plants, all right? I'm talking generally, certain cactuses, certain plants actually need more of that. But in general, most plants, the most critical compound actually is nitrogen. And now they have a nitrogen minister that wants to ban nitrogen. This is insane. And it's the main thing that they are coming for is the urine from the animals, okay? And also the fertilizer that they are using. So they're saying farmers are using too much fertilizer that has nitrogen, and they're also saying that your animals are producing nitrogen from their urine, all right? They're saying that ammonium nitrate is building up in the soil, and they're saying apparently this is a toxic chemical, even though ammonium nitrate is the key chemical that plants can absorb. It's the liquid form of nitrogen that plants can absorb through their roots is ammonium nitrate. And that's what they're banning, and that's what's in urine, and that's what's in fertilizer. These are all very similar chemicals, and they are banning them all, and they're critical to plant life and plant growth. This is a shutdown, and they are banning, it says 2,000 to 3,000 farms, right? And they're saying, this is what the nitrogen minister said. I got off on this rant here because it's so dystopian to have a, quote, nitrogen minister, all right? But this is what he said to, quote, there's no better offer coming. Quote, there's no better offer coming. She said compulsory purchases would be made with, quote, pain in the heart if necessary. It's pain in their heart. And there's no better offer coming. Sorry, this is it. You either take the money and run, or that's it. Or we're just going to do it anyways, all right? This is dystopian and sick. And the Netherlands are a main powerhouse for the EU, for agriculture, all right? And this is coming everywhere. This is the excuse to shut down everything. They use any kind of thing like this to shut it down, right? Remember the past couple years, that was the excuse to shut it all down. But now this is the excuse to shut it all down, right? And they're going for it, and they have international treaties that they've signed on to. All of these countries, all right? Paris Accord, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050, net zero, carbon, all these different agendas are signed on international treaties, and they're saying they have to follow these treaties and they have to shut down these farms, all right? This was also another excuse that they had. It says the Netherlands needs to reduce its emissions to comply with the EU conservation rules, and agriculture is responsible for almost half the nitrogen emitted in the proud farming nation. So you are a mass polluter if you are in agriculture, right? And you produce almost half the nitrogen. Why do we keep, these are organic, natural compounds. CO2 is an organic, natural compound for plant growth. This is almost just like alien. Who is coming up with these ideas to shut down these organic compounds? And this is common sense. This is stuff we all learned in school, all right? And nitrogen, just like I said, it's essential for plant growth. So is CO2. And they're saying, oh, you contribute to half of it, so this is a problem. This feels alien. This feels like a takeover. This is a shutdown of everything organic, right? Everything plants need. Like, what's the next? H2O. H2O is one of the most toxic chemicals on the planet. H2O contributes to erosion of massive mineral deposits and erodes the plant matter and the plant mass around tree bases and contributes to deforestation. H2O is a acidic compound that erodes the planet and erodes the soil. All right, it creates less room for farming when H2O floods regions. H2O can destroy people's homes. All right, you can do this with anything. This is just insane. And everyone knows H2O is water. If you didn't catch on, that was water. If you were sucked in there, you thought that was like, wait, what is he talking? That was a troll. It's water. You can do this with anything. This is insane. We are shutting down the natural chemicals, the natural compounds to life. These are all natural. But then the FDA approves nanoparticles in your food. There are plastics, estrogen mimicking plastics in all the water bottles with BPA. right? All these dystopian chemicals are approved, but anything that's an organic compound essential to life, essential to plant life, is shut down. By the way, you need nitrogen as well. You need nitrogen in your body as well for development, all right? So all these things are being shut down. So it says the Dutch Environment Agency has warned that native species are disappearing faster in the Netherlands than in the rest of Europe, and that biodiversity is under threat too. Right? So just another thing. But the new plan looks set to reignite tensions with farmers over nitrogen reduction. Dutch farmers have staged mass protests, burnt hay bales, dumped manure on highways, and picketed ministers' houses over the last 3 years. Yeah, in the summer, these protests flared up a bunch because this is when they announced these rules. And they said, we're going to give you till autumn, till later in the year, to make a decision. Do you want to sell your farm? Are you just going to do it? Or are we going to force you to do it? Right? This is crazy. I'm surprised they didn't just say, if you don't do it, we're going to just take your farm, or we're going to offer you less, and then we're just going to take it. I'm surprised they didn't have some bonus to incentivize you to get rid of your farm that potentially your family had for generations, even if you just bought it. There's no reason. This is your private property, and this is insane. This is dystopian government 1984 to the max, all right? In 2019, a ruling by the Dutch Council of State meant every new activity that emits nitrogen, including farming and building, needs a permit. Every new activity that emits nitrogen. Every new activity that emits nitrogen needs a permit. This is insane. This is dystopian. I can't even believe that they are allowed to implement laws like this on things that are natural occurring compounds that plants need, that life on Earth needs. It feels like a attack on the system itself, right? On nature itself. This is crazy. That has prevented the expansion of dairy, pig, and poultry farms, which are major sources of nitrogen from ammonia and manure mixed with urine, right? So I was saying ammonium nitrate is one of the main chemicals they're targeting, and it's from urine and cow manure, and it's critical to developing soil. If you know anything about soil development, it needs carbon in the soil, okay? It has to have X amount of carbon in the soil to actually develop a rich soil. It can't just be all sand or all clay. It has to be, a good amount of carbon in the soil. And you get this, and nitrogen as well. And you get this from manure, from urine. You get this from animals grazing your land. The plants literally sequester carbon into the ground. The plants absorb CO2, the grass does. The cows eat it, and then the cows make manure on the ground, and they make more rich soil for more grass to grow. And then when the cows are eating the grass is in this growth phase where it absorbs the most amount of carbon, because once it gets to a certain growth phase, it kind of stops growing. The sweet spot's right in the middle. So if you have your cows grazing it right in the middle, then it's always absorbing the most amount of carbon from the atmosphere anyways, because it's always in its highest growth phase, and it needs carbon and nitrogen to grow. This is critical to soil, and they want to eliminate this. This is what the buffalo did. This is where the Great Plains came from in the U.S., is the buffalo roaming and their manure, their very rich manure, building up the soil over years, all right? So I know I'm getting off into these rants here, but this is so dystopian and anti-human, it's just hard to believe. So you need a permit for anything that emits nitrogen, including farming and building. And this has prevented the expansion of dairy, pig, and poultry farms, which are a major source of nitrogen from ammonia and manure mixed with urine. This can be harmful for nature when it washes into rivers and the sea. Harmful, right? Urine and manure from ruminants, from bovines, is harmful. It's harmful. There was no buffalo. That didn't exist. That was not a thing a couple hundred years ago. Didn't exist. They would be extremely harmful. Think of all the buffalo if they were out here. Extremely harmful, right? I don't understand. Doesn't make sense to me. Last month, an army of thousands of tractors took to the road in protest and caused the worst rush hour in Dutch history, with 700 miles of jams at its peak. Farmers fear that the plan to slash emissions by 2030 will cost them their livelihoods, oppose any compulsory purchases, and argue farming is unfairly targeted while other sectors such as aviation are not, right? Because they don't want to target aviation because they fly in their private jets, right? That's why. So ministers will decide if enough farms have come forward voluntarily to close in the autumn. So they will decide if it's enough. All right, we'll see. That's 2,300. I don't know. We need 3,000. We need 2,500. I'm not happy. We need to shut down. Who do they decide? It's crazy. This nitrogen minister is just gonna come and shut down your farm. Imagine the government just coming to your property, shutting down your farm, and it's for your own good. It's for your own good, buddy. You better listen. They say the plan will help biodiversity recover. Building could resume, and farms without proper nitrogen permits or with proper nitrogen permits could be legalized. So if you have your permit, maybe you can resume. We'll see. But we got to shut down thousands of you first, right? They're also looking at eventually taxing nitrogen emissions to encourage more sustainable practices, the Dutch news website reported. So this is the next wave. It's more than just carbon taxes. It's nitrogen too. It's every organic compound is oxygen next? Oxygen technically can be toxic at certain levels, right? I don't know. Is oxygen next? Maybe there's too much oxygen. Maybe it's reacting. I don't know. What's next? What is next? This is insane. This is dystopian, and this is a shutdown. So let me know what you think about this. Get your fertilizer now. This is the next step. We've already seen the supply chains shut down for food, for energy, for fuel, for fertilizer. Farmers have reported 300% increase in fertilizer prices this year. All right. So next is to just say, we need to shut it down. All right. We need to shut down the fertilizer. So get stocked up on fertilizer. Even if you're not growing right now, have this stuff, right? Because who knows? It could hit the fan, right? You might need to get through winter, but then you might have enough food to get you through whatever winter, get you through a season or two. But then what? Then you might need to grow your own food, or you might just want to grow now or get stocked up now before there are shortages, before prices do go up on these things. So stock up on fertilizer too, stock up on seeds. This is the best time to get seeds. Everyone thinks the best time is in spring. It's not. Best time is in fall and early winter, when everyone just harvested and they just restocked all their seeds, and nobody's even thinking about gardening, and all the seed suppliers just refilled their inventory. Stock up on seeds now. This is the best time, and you can get bulk packages of stuff for $10-15, right? And you can have seasons worth of seeds for $10 of your favorite seeds, $15, $20 of your favorite tomato seeds, your favorite lettuce seeds, whatever. You can have seasons worth of seeds for just a few, whatever, $10-20 per crop, and then you're stocked up, right? And then you have literally years worth of seeds, and a lot of them come in Mylar sealable or sealed off bags that last a very long time, right? So have that for your storage, but have your seeds that you want to plant whatever next year, but have those bulk ones too in case it hits the fan, right? That's what I always do. I have little packs for the year because I always like growing different stuff, and then I have big bulk ones of reliable seeds that I know are strains that work and I can produce with, you know what I mean? I'm not just like screwing around trying to see if this one goes, see if this one doesn't. It's reliable, and I have a bulk order of it in case it hits the fan. All right, so get stocked up, get fertilizer too. Even if it's not organic or whatever, it doesn't have to be. Just get some kind of bulk fertilizer. You can buy the little packs, all right? You see everywhere. But if you can find a big 10-10-10, like a 50-pound bag, 40-pound bag of 10-10-10, make sure it's for vegetables, because there's stuff that's not for any kind of food. That's kind of toxic for food, actually. Make sure it's actually for food, but if you can get a big bag of that, that's your best bet, all right? Buy in bulk and just have it, just in case it hits the fan, all right? And you desperately need to grow food, because this is happening all over the world, and they are shutting down farms as well. They're also implementing garden registries, right? I've seen reports of this going around too, where they want to track, and they're just saying, oh, they just want to know like how strong the food security is in the United States. They want to track how many small farms, how many gardens, how many homesteads there are in the United States. But this also could be setting up to track you and shut down your farm or your homestead one day as well if you are producing too much nitrogen or too much CO2 or too much whatever from your animals, all right? I have chickens, all right? They smells like they produce a ton of nitrogen, all right? Sure smells like it, all right? They don't stink all the time, but you know how it is in the morning when you open up their coop and they've been going all night in there. It stinks, all right? Smells like they're producing some nitrogen for sure. So even that could be regulated. Sorry, you can't have chickens anymore. That produces too much. It's not, under our rules. Sorry about that. We don't know how much you're actually producing. We don't know how many chickens you actually have. We don't know how many animals you actually have. We don't know how much fertilizer you're using. All these things are setting up to track and trace you individually as well for your garden or homestead too. So get prepared, guys. Get stocked up. Stay blessed. I hope you have big blessings in your life, and I hope you're getting prepared for your family and yourself. And thank you, guys. Have a big old blessed day.